Ashton Rich. It's crunch time.
Jeff Matthews here in the studios of 91.9 FM. Ashton Rich joining me, Brad Bader, as always. It is now crunch time. Now, to start things off, we always like to go ahead and go around the table. Ashton, how was your weekend?
I was on a mini vacation this weekend in Oxford, Mississippi.
Oh, wow.
For anyone wondering if the coronavirus mask mandate in Mississippi thing was real, yeah, it's real. It's a completely different world down there. No one cares about corona anymore. It's actually insane. But other than that, weekend was pretty good. How about you two fellers?
Well, Bradley?
Pretty good. I was bogged down in homework. I just couldn't wait to get in here today so you guys could dazzle me with some sports knowledge.
Oh, I love that.
We'll try our best here, you know what I mean? I had a pretty good weekend, though. I didn't really do too much. I had to work, of course, but then also I had to go over to a friend's house over in Spring Hill, Tennessee. But it was a pretty good time. I didn't call anything. Me and Justin hung out for a little bit, talked some sports, talked about doing some stuff on our own. So it's a good time. Had a good weekend. Nothing too fancy though, so it was pretty good. Have finals coming up. I know you do too.
So
It's gonna get rough here for a minute, but hey, we'll power through. Be all right. All right, let's start things off. We're looking at Austin Peay baseball not having the best season this year, starting off anyway. Still a lot of baseball left to play. They're right now 2-8. Didn't do so well. They won their last game just a few days ago, and then now they're playing MTSU later today at 3 p.m. But one of the bigger things is I want to go ahead and do a kind of a recap on the OVC tournament because both Austin Peay teams, men's and women, lost in the first round. But let's see here. Moorhead won the championship, men's team, 86-71 over Belmont. But then the Belmont women's team took the championship this year.
So not so much of a surprise in the women's bracket, kind of a big surprise in the men's bracket because Belmont is kind of the perennial power in the OVC, them alongside Murray State. So Moorhead being kind of, being so-and-so and then coming out good this year and then taking them down, obviously kind of a big deal. I wouldn't be shocked if Belmont and Moorhead both got, if Belmont got an at-large bid to the tournament because they've been excellent this year and on the court. And then on the women's side, like you mentioned, Austin Peay, first-round exit again for, I believe, the fifth or sixth time in Coach David Midlick's tenure. We learned yesterday, late in the afternoon, that Coach Midlick is not going to be returning as head basketball coach for the APSU women's team. As far as we can guess, it seems to be a mutual thing where his contract was not extended versus being fired. But you have to think that if you're not extending longtime Coach Midlick's contract, that athletic director Gerald Harrison has someone in mind.
I think you're right, and it's definitely kind of a tough thing. I liked Midlick. I think he's a great coach. I just think I think his best time to make a run for the championship was with Keisha Gregory.
Right.
I think a couple of years ago when you have somebody who's just dominant on the free throw line as much as she was. I mean, I think it was top 20 in the NCAA in free throws. I mean, she was just a dominant player who could drop threes as well. So, I mean, without Keisha Gregory, it just seems that there was something a little bit missing from this team kind of going forward and just haven't really been able to get back to that success. That last year with Keisha Gregory, I think, was the closest they've ever really come to going to the championship.
Yeah, and I think we see the same kind of issue for the men's team, right, is they lack scoring. The Austin Peay men's team, same deal. Outside of Terry Taylor, nobody scores for them consistently, and that's what you got to ask yourself going forward is now who's going to be the scorer for Austin Peay, both on the men's and the women's side, because for the women, it was always kind of a group effort. The Furby twins would chip in about 25 total combined points. Casey Kidwell would chop about 8. Yeah. Tahani Bennell would give you about 10. It was a big group effort. Ariel Gonzalez-Varner might give you 20 on a good night. And it was just kind of a group effort. But you didn't really have anyone that was like, all right, we can throw it to this person to go get us a bucket like it was Keisha.
You always got to have that one person that can just completely run the court and can completely take control of situations. And we just don't really see that, especially without Terry Taylor for the men's team. I mean, do you have anybody who you can think of on the men's team that can take that step up?
Unless Jordan Adams plans on hanging around, I don't see it.
Hopefully he does. I like Jordan Adams, but it's going to be interesting, that's for sure. A lot of things going to have to get into the full swing of things. But my question was, 6 years for Midlick, he's been here at Austin Peay with no championship. Coach Matt Figger for the men's team is coming up on 6 years. Do you think Matt Figger could be on his way out?
I don't think so unless it's under his terms, just because he's been a little bit more successful than Midlick has. Midlick has kind of been 500 every year. 500 career record, never made it past the first round of the OVC tournament. Figger, on the other hand, has made it past, a couple, not passed the first round a couple times, especially last year. Never really won it, never went super deep, but has at least been competitive in the conference enough to warrant getting deeper into the tournament. So I think for Figger, it's a point of, unless he has just a really bad year next year and it doesn't look like the rebuild's going well, I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon unless he gets a job offer at a bigger school or something like that.
Yeah, I could definitely see that happening, but I just don't know. I don't know what school would come after him. I can't. I don't know. That's a weird situation just because I feel like Austin P is where Figger wants to be right now.
Sure.
I feel like, at least that's how I perceive him to be when I've interacted with him before. But I guess there's just no way of knowing because sometimes teams will just come out of nowhere and try to grab you. But I think Coach Figger has a lot of opportunities coming up this season. Like you talked about the rebuild. I mean, he's been able to bring in some really good players outside of Austin P and kind of get them to transfer over here, and then also bringing up the high school kids coming into Austin P. I think there's a huge opportunity for Austin P to really build a team that can go deeper than what Terry Taylor was able to take them.
And that's how you're recruiting your guys this offseason is like, hey, we just, one of the greatest players in our program history just left. Do you want to be the next guy? That's a pitch you can use to your recruits if you've got someone that you're really wanting to pursue hard. But other than that, they're just going to have to really find some type of stability on the offensive side of the court next season for sure.
That they will. Let's go ahead and jump into our next topic. We're going to get away from Austin P. We're going to branch out into the national world. Talking about Ben Roethlisberger, he does sign a new deal with the Steelers for another year. He's got to have one more opportunity to go to the Super Bowl and get that 7. What is your opinion on him staying for another year?
I mean, let's not sugarcoat it. Like, Ben was not particularly good last year. If you look at his average depth of target, he was in the bottom half of the league easily, probably bottom third. The Steelers ran just a whole lot of crossing routes and told, hey, Chase Claypool, you're fast, run deep. And that was their offense. So Juju Smith-Schuster is not going to be back next year. They declined to franchise tag him. They did not sign him to a long-term deal. No James Conner and no James Conner leading the backfield for them anymore. So as it stands, before free agency in the draft, it will be Anthony McFarland and Benny Snell, whichever spelling of Snell you prefer, his actual spelling or Snell as in how slow he is. And that's not particularly great as a backfield pairing. You could probably find better backfield pairings. Probably could find a better one at Austin Peay. So I believe the Steelers are going to be big players in free agency for a running back. Someone like Chris Carson might be a good look for them. Chris Carson was not franchise tagged by the Seahawks today as many expected him to be. The draft has also got pretty good quality options at running back, especially in those mid-rounds. A guy like Javonte Williams could be a second or third-round pick, would instantly be the best back on the team. Chuba Hubbard's another one that might be a decent look. But I think for the Steelers as a whole, Ben's has got to play better. But I think at the same time, their calling card last year was really just how suffocating their defense was. And if they can find a consistent run game, along with a little bit better of an offensive philosophy where Big Ben's not throwing 60 times a game and averaging like 4 yards of completion, I think they'll be doing a little bit better.
I think they will too. I think I guarantee they don't go 11-0 next year.
Oh, absolutely not.
Absolutely not. I don't know. I can definitely see them making. I could see a 10-16, 10-6, 10-16. You know what I meant?
I think 10 wins is about right. Maybe 11. I think their ceiling is like 12 wins. Their floor is like 6.
Yes,
if Ben just really like falls off the cliff, they might only win 6 games.
And then if they can't get anybody in the backfield that can actually produce some good opportunities, then definitely I don't think.
And it's not like Benny Snell isn't a good running back.
Right.
He just is not explosive at all. He's a good goal line back, but the problem is like goal line backs aren't really important in the NFL anymore because your goal line offense is your spread offense.
Exactly. So I mean, who knows what's going to happen with that situation? I think the Steelers have a great opportunity. When you get to have a chance to rebuild, you just have to make sure that you have the strongest people in place that make those decisions of who you want to bring in.
Sure.
Because in a rebuild, I mean, that's really going to make or break the next few years for your program. I mean, you get one bad guy and one bad deal. I mean, you have a bad season ahead of you.
Well, and I think it's important for them to go ahead and find the next guy up because to me, this was probably Ben's last good year.
Right.
Unless he puts something together next year to be pretty, he was pretty pedestrian. So they've already got Dwayne Haskins on roster. Dwayne Haskins isn't anything special unless he does some type of major turnaround. Mason Rudolph's their only other quarterback, and we saw how bad he was the year before. So I think this is the year, maybe not this year, maybe it's next year, where you go out and you get a quarterback. You go out and get if let's say they have a down year, they have that 6-game floor like we talked about. That'll put them top 10 in picks more than likely.
Right.
You've got a chance at a Sam Howell, at a Matt Corral, at a Keaton Slovis, a Brock Purdy. You've got a chance at one of those guys that is going to come out next year and going to be one of those highly rated quarterbacks. And even if you don't, you could probably find somebody in free agency to at least be a bridge guy. Teddy Bridgewater's contract's probably going to be up.
Deshaun Watson?
They don't.
Deshaun Watson?
They don't have I don't think they have the capital to trade for Deshaun Watson.
I don't think they do either. I don't think that.
To me,
the other truth is I don't think they have anything that the Texans would want.
Oh, the Texans should want anything they can get because the Texans, like, the best player on their team when Deshaun Watson decides to sit out this year is going to be David Johnson,
Cricket,
like a 29-year-old running back.
Cricket.
So yeah, exactly. So I think if you're the Texans, we're beating a dead horse at this point with Deshaun Watson on the show. But if you're the Texans, like, at some point you have to stop believing that you can fix that relationship, and you kind of just have to say, okay, this guy's not going to play for us. What can we get? Because people are going to pay for Deshaun Watson.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that you have to look very strongly at the 49ers and the Broncos as trade partners because both of them have quarterbacks. Broncos obviously have Drew Lock, who's a young guy. Jimmy Garoppolo, not as young guy, but stable. Someone you could bridge your franchise with for a few years. And, I think that if you're the Broncos, the best trade package you probably could offer is Drew Lock, a couple firsts, and another premier player on your team. Von Miller, as an example, might not be a bad throw in on that trade. He's getting older towards the end of his line, and Von Miller would be somebody that'd sell a lot of jerseys in Houston.
That is true. You want to talk about building some capital over in Texas. That'd be a great idea to get Von Miller and Drew Lock.
Von Miller gets to go home to Texas. Drew Lock gets to go to Texas. The Texans get a couple picks, and the Texans get to sell a lot of jerseys that say Miller on the back of them.
Hey, that's
but not Lamar Miller this time.
Not Lamar Miller. No, another big signing going on in the NFL. Probably the most.
You're very happy about this one.
You say that, but I have my opinions. However, I do agree that we should have signed him. Because I'm sitting there next to Jerry Jones. Me and Brad are over there with our Dallas Cowboy hats on, going, "Hey, Jerry!"
Hanging out with Jerry at his place over in Arkansas.
Oh yeah, there you go. So Dak gets $160 million over the course of 4 years. 126 of that is going to be guaranteed, which has been record breaking for the guaranteed money.
Deserves every penny of it.
Absolutely. Do I want him on the Cowboys? Yes. I think he's a great quarterback. Fantastic quarterback. I just hope that he hasn't. I just hope that after the injury, he can produce the same amount of results that he was able to.
Sure.
And I mean that in a good way, not as in like a fan, like, I don't want him if he's, damaged goods. I just, I really want him to do well for us, for any team, really, because I think that's how great of a quarterback that he can be.
Right. And we've seen those kind of injuries kind of had long-term lasting effects on guys, right? Like Gordon Hayward isn't the same player that he was before his injury. Paul George, luckily, is almost kind of the same player that he was. So, I mean, I guess those are the two most recent examples. Could be a hit or miss, but luckily for Dak, he's not playing a position where his athleticism is just uberly important. If we take another example, Marcus Lattimore, maybe not a name that you guys remember, but South Carolina running back a couple 10 years ago or so, he had an awful leg injury in a game against Tennessee, and he was never quite the same running back ever again. I mean, he was talked about as being on like Reggie Bush levels of talented, and after his knee injury, barely lasted 2 years in the NFL. So we've seen those kind of injuries derail guys' careers before. But as far as the money goes, I believe after signing bonuses and everything, Dak's going to make $75 million next year.
Yeah, just about.
So props to Dak, shots on Dak. And,
hey,
there you
get
go.
you some money, boy.
Go ahead and get your bag, Dak. But one great thing about the Dak deal that I did see was that he has a no-trade clause and he has a no-tag clause, which means when that deal runs out, if they do not have another deal in place for him, they can't franchise tag him, or they'll avoid that. There'll be some penalty along the contract. So Dak is going to be a free agent again when he's 31.
Yep.
Theoretically, still in the prime of his career, and can go get another huge payday from potentially another team if the Cowboys have not worked out for him. So well done for Dak and his agent getting that one together.
I mean, it's taken over a year to get this deal done. I mean, it has been wild for the Cowboys just in this whole situation, and then especially the dramatic issue with Dak getting the franchise tag and then getting injured under that franchise tag. I mean, I'm happy for Dak. I'm glad that he got a deal. I just hope that he can play to the same level that he was able to, and then also I really do hope that the Cowboys can get us a Super Bowl this year, hopefully in the next 4 years, because I feel like I feel like as of right now, this is the best opportunity the Cowboys have had to get a Super Bowl in the last probably 7 years. I think maybe 20. What year was that? Year that Dez caught it. That was 2014, I think. So that was a few. Wow, that was a long time ago.
We say a few years ago, and it's been nearly a decade. So
I just realized that was 6 years,
Yep.
7 years ago.
Yep.
So I was right. Oh my goodness. Well, I feel old now.
Yep, there you go.
Whew. Okay, so let's move on. Jalen versus Mac Jones. Now, you had brought up before the show really started that Mac Jones, there was a mock draft pulled out from somewhere, and Mac Jones was going to Philly.
Yes, so Pro Football Focus, which if you're not familiar with what they are, is they're advanced metrics for NFL. They do a lot of grading and a lot of things like that. One of the analysts for Pro Football Focus, Seth Galina, did a mock draft using their mock draft tool, and the mock draft tool is free to anyone. You can use it. You literally just go to PFF's website and look at their mock draft tool, and you can set all kinds of different things like realism and like trade and how likely teams are wanting to make trades, things like that. It's a fun thing to play around with. But he had Mac Jones going at 6 overall to the Eagles, and then 2 picks later were Trey Lance and Zach Wilson, respectively. So, and we discussed it briefly, but Mac Jones versus Jalen Hurts. I think the conversation here is more about, do you want the ceiling or do you want the floor?
Right.
And what I mean by that is Jalen Hurts' ceiling is as high as any guy we've ever seen. If Jalen Hurts reaches his full potential, he is potential Hall of Famer.
Yes.
However, his floor is Blake Bortles, who is no longer in the league.
Correct.
A more athletic Blake Bortles. I think you could probably do more with Hurts than you could with Blake Bortles because at least you have Hurts is a little bit more athletic than Blake Bortles. Mac Jones, on the other hand, his ceiling is probably Kirk Cousins, a little bit better version of Kirk Cousins, which that's not to say anything bad about Kirk Cousins because Kirk Cousins is consistently a top 15 quarterback in the league. But no one comes into a game and says, all right, we got to figure out how we're going to not let Kirk Cousins beat us. When people play the Vikings, it's, all right, how do we stop Dalvin Cook?
Yeah.
So I think that and then on the other hand, Mac Jones's floor is like, trying to think of a name specifically, but his floor is not nearly as low as his floor is like Jimmy Garoppolo.
Okay, yeah.
His floor is like good starter, not bad starter. So if you think about it, that pick would be a complete safety pick. And the Eagles have already come out and said, well, we're committed to giving Jalen Hurts a shot. We're committed to giving Jalen Hurts weapons and to create an offense that we feel like will play to its strengths, which if you're a good coach, that's what you're going to do anyway. Because you're going to try and build an offense around what your team does well already.
Here's the thing. The story of Jalen Hurts, I think, attests to his incredible work ethic. I mean, 3 different college teams, finally gets to go, gets that starting position that he wanted out of, help.
Oklahoma.
Thank you. I knew it. Anyway, he finally gets that starting position. He can finally prove himself, finally gets the chance to kind of show all of his potential, even though back in Alabama he was doing fantastic too. I mean, he had a good amount of looks. Just Alabama, I think, had a different idea of what they wanted to do, and I think he knew that, and I think he just decided to make that decision. But I think my point in this whole conversation right now is he has shown how hard he can work in learning new systems.
Right.
Between 3 different colleges in 4 years, I believe. I don't think he used his 5th year of eligibility.
It was Alabama for 2 years, then Oklahoma for 1.
Okay, so he was 3, and then he went to the draft. Okay. With that being said, if you're the Eagles, I look at that, and then I look at also who he is and what he's accomplished, everything else that you've looked at. I think you go with Jalen no matter what. As a starting quarterback, you focus on him. I think you also bring in Mac Jones, develop him, and then if Jalen just ends up not blooming to the full potential that you feel like he can, you also have Mac Jones who's studying under him.
Sure. I don't think the Eagles will be able to pull that off just because they would have to draft him really high. They could do it, but I think that pick would be better suited for a Devontae Smith, a Jamar Chase if he's there, a Kyle Pitts maybe, because despite having Dallas Goedert, the Eagles are shopping Zach Ertz actively, and they've already said, if we can't find a trade suitor, I guess we're just going to have to cut him, basically.
Who do you think? I haven't really seen a whole lot. Who goes number 2 overall right now?
Number 2 overall right now? Justin Fields. Or no. It's between. It's really between 3 guys.
That's what I thought.
To the Jets. So it's Justin Fields, Penei. I think I said that correct. Sewell, tackle from Oregon, and Zach Wilson.
Zach Wilson.
Now a lot of people really like Zach Wilson. I have seen it was a former NFL scout Daniel Kelly. I'm not familiar with what teams he was a scout for, but I know he's a former scout. Has published a couple things through a Twitter account, NFL Draft Diamonds, in the past couple weeks about He's got like a bust rating, and he's got some pretty controversial opinions. He says that Trevor Lawrence has a high chance of being a bust.
Okay.
And he says that Zach Wilson has an extremely high chance of being a bust.
Okay.
And the reasoning for Lawrence, at least, is that he was basically saying, well, he looked good on tape because he was able to cheat college defenses. He was like basically saying that like his arm talent was so good and teams knew that he was able to just cheat reps basically against actual teams in live action, which is still impressive. If you're talented enough to cheat the rep in a game, you're pretty good. So, and then for Wilson, it was when he throws, the ball seems to hang in the air, which I myself thought that is true because when I was watching him on tape, he likes to scramble around and make all kinds of backyard plays, kind of like a Mormon version of Kyler Murray. And, when he throws across his body, you're watching the ball, it's like the receiver's standing there waiting for it like this. And it's like,
oh, really?
Wow, the ball's taking forever to get there. So it makes you concerned, especially on a wider NFL field, about his arm strength.
And that goes back to what you and I were talking about a couple weeks ago when we talked about the difference between the passing game in college and the NFL. The gaps are a whole lot bigger in college ball than they are in the NFL.
And then in the NFL at the same time, a lot of, especially Justin Fields, is getting a lot of flack for being a one-read guy in college. A lot of your college offenses now especially are just RPO. Most of your quarterbacks you're getting are athletic enough where it's a, read option with a pass option included. So you're literally just sitting here like doing the read option for the defensive end, but you're at the same time looking at the linebacker over the defensive end and saying, okay, the defensive end's crashing on me. I need to give it to the running back. Or the defensive end went with my running back, oh, that linebacker's coming to me, I need to throw it over his head. It's one read, and you don't have to do anything. Whereas in the pros, you go into a play, and some of your plays are 16 words long.
Right.
And, they're like X shallow, Y drag, Z cross, whatever. And, you've got to spit that verbiage back to your teammates, and then you've got to understand, okay, what does this play mean?
Yeah.
And then at the same time, you've got, maybe a 5-read progression. So it's a lot more complicated playing quarterback, and that's why a lot of your guys in college that are super talented, like your Jamarcus Russells, like your Johnny Manziels, like your Vince Youngs, don't make it. Vince Young's debatable because a lot of people blame Jeff Fisher, but just as an example.
No, I agree with that. I think there's so much more to learn. I mean, there's so much, and then also I think the political aspect of the sports realm becomes so much more predominant when you get to the NFL than when it is in college ball. Now, of course, me not being a part of like an SEC team or anything like that, I feel like it's hard for me to speak on that, but just on the outside looking towards it, I feel like there's a lot of politics you have to learn in college, but then when you get to the NFL, it goes way more than that. I mean, everything you do is kind of related to something else. You know what I mean? You're connected in some different aspect. And with that, I mean, learning all these new plays, and like you said, some of these words, they're not sentences. They're just words put together, and you have to decipher.
If you were writing a paper, you would get an F on that sentence for a run-on sentence.
I think the professor calls you and asks if you're okay. If you turn in I think that's really the only thing that they can do.
I just got an image of you submitting a paper and like Professor Richard calling Jeff. You wrote XY drags the X cross onto on your paper. Are you okay?
She texts Ellison, and then Ellison calls me. That's probably exactly what would have happened if that's how it goes down. All right, one of the not last topic necessarily, but depending on where we go with time. Okay, so I just got where we got 5 minutes, so we'll talk about this. Odell Beckham. Okay, Tom Brady, Odell Beckham. There has been hints that Tom Brady wouldn't mind having Odell Beckham down in Tampa. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that? I like it because I think Odell can do great. However, the contract with him over in Cleveland right now, I just don't think Tampa can get it done.
So, yeah, and I don't think they could, don't think they will, because the Browns have been pretty staunch that Odell Beckham's not going anywhere this offseason. Right. They want to give him one more chance with Baker.
That's another conversation with Baker.
Right, exactly. So I don't think that's happening now. Of course, you've got Chris Godwin was franchise tagged earlier today. Today's the deadline for franchise tagging players. So there's a lot of moves happening in the NFL today.
And it's not done. Like, they're still going.
Chris Godwin was franchise tagged before he came on the show. Kenny Golladay did not receive the franchise tag from the Lions, so he will be an unrestricted free agent. Both Chris Carson and Shaquille Griffin of the Seahawks did not get franchise tag. They will be unrestricted free agents. Keanu Neal of the Falcons did not receive the franchise tag. Allen Robinson of the Bears was franchise tagged, so he will be in Chicago one more year. Cam Robinson of the Jaguars was a surprise of the day, as people were like, well, why are they franchise tagging him? He kind of stinks. And I think one of the takes I saw on it was as well, you're about to have a brand-new quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. You want to have as many people as you have to try and protect him.
You think Gardner Minshew goes anywhere?
I'm gonna be honest. I've seen some pictures of Gardner Minshew when he's been working out, and he's looking good. He's
putting on some gains?
He's looking beefy, man. He's out here
Wow.
looking like Bryson DeChambeau with the beefiness.
Me too. But I'm just saying, so his personality is one of those personalities that
I love Gardner. Yeah,
I mean,
it's awesome.
With the pictures of him in the jorts. I mean,
Yeah.
come on, how can
Yeah,
you not
he's-
like that guy?
He's awesome. I just wish he was actually really talented at
I
throwing
know.
in NFL football.
I wish he was just a little bit better. I'm trying to think of somebody to compare him to in his talent, who has been able to kind of make some success. But I just don't think I
There's
can.
not really been any.
I can't think of somebody.
Very rarely will you get a guy that's got a below average arm. Now, granted, he wins on accuracy, but at the same time, you've got to be able to make the throws.
You got to be able to make the throws, and I mean, Kyler Murray, I think, has had a lot of struggles. He's a shorter guy. Do you think Kyler Murray would have had better success had he gone to the Major League Baseball? The Major League Baseball?
I'm not familiar with Kyler as a baseball player, so I can't speak on that. But I think Kyler's. I think he's probably, other than your Josh Allens, your Jalen Hurts. I think that Kyler Murray. Well, I think Josh Allen has the highest ceiling of any quarterback in the NFL right now. I think that's.
Yes.
As we saw from last year, that was what he's doing, and he was like kind of still kind of learning. That's kind of scary.
Yeah.
But Kyler Murray, K1, right up there. His ceiling is insane. And to be as fast as he is and to have as good of an arm as he does.
He's a shorter guy, but he can launch that ball.
He can absolutely sling that rock. And, man, I'm excited to see the progression of Kyler Murray. I think he could kind of be a new age Russell Wilson in a sense. Russell Wilson really did pave the way for the short guys, if we're being honest.
Oh,
here.
yeah, 100%. I mean, he when he came into the league, went straight to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, he was just that was a huge topic during it. I mean, was his height. Everyone just didn't think he was going to be able to kind of.
And John Elway, the GM of the Broncos, even said, I loved Russell Wilson, but we went with Brock Osweiler because Brock Osweiler was over 6 feet tall.
Right, and
Russell
how'd
wasn't.
that work out?
Exactly.
Where is he now?
Hey, Brock Lobster made his bag, though.
Brock Lobster?
Yeah.
I love that.
He was terrible, but he got his bag.
It's true. He did get some money.
From the lowly Texans. May they rest in peace.
Hey, R.I.P., baby.
We just need to relegate them to, like, FCS. We'll put Austin P in the NFL. It's all
Put
right.
Austin P. Yeah, that'll work out.
Yeah.
That'll work out real great. Having what would we go 2 seasons, no wins? We'd probably go 17 seasons.
Don't mention that.
We don't talk about that time.
Yeah, we don't talk about that time.
That was a
doesn't
rough time
exist.
for everybody.
Yeah.
That was during our that was my freshman year.
That would have been our freshman, sophomore years, yes.
Wow.
Yep.
Brad, how old do you feel?
Ooh. Whoa.
Feel?
Feel, because
You
I feel
almost-
90,
10 times.
97.
I feel 97. I
now,
feel old.
I will say that I did see a thing on Twitter the other day. If you don't are unfamiliar, everyone on the show, that I get all of my news from Twitter. So it's men.
All of it's reliable, 100% fact checked.
Well, no, this was just kind of a joke, but it was like men at some point stop maturing at like age 16 and they just get older. And I was like, yeah, that's like beautiful because like Brad, don't you like at the same kind of like you stop maturing at like 22 or something like that, and you're just like now you just get older each year.
I think it's 26.
Yeah, I just look older, but I have the same mindset of a 16-year-old boy.
There you go. That's
Our
same
frontal
here.
lobes don't start. That's a bunch of science stuff. But our
Don't science me. This is a sports show.
If you ever talk to me that way again, I promise you, it'll be the end of our show because it is the end of our show. All of the
that was
time we
nice.
have
I like
for the
that.
week. We want to thank you guys for joining. Jeff Matthews, Ashton Rich, Brad Bader. We shall see you next week on Crunch Time.